Preschool, raise your hand if you're hearing a little bit more now than you used to. Well, I think it's because finally the research has gotten out there. The research has been there for a long time. I majored in early childhood education years ago, and I knew this research, but it was finally when men could finally see what was happening in the brain, because we were able to go in and put these nodules on kids and actually see what happens when we provide them a stimulation as opposed to when we don't. So it's been really exciting to see the changes that have occurred in early childhood education. And I just pulled out one slide to really show you the difference, because what we know is that what happens in those early years really makes an incredible difference. And this slide illustrates a study that was done by Hart and Risley, two of my friends, years ago, where they went into families' houses and spent a whole lot of time listening to the interaction and counted the words that babies heard. And then they analyzed not only the number, but the quality of those interactions. And what they found is that we have a 30 million word gap between children at the lower income levels and children in professional families. It's those of you in this room are talking to your kids and your grandkids a lot. You're using really positive reinforcement. You're expanding on their language, and that's allowing them to get a really good start. And in lower income families, moms and dads aren't talking a lot. There's a lot of TV, and TV does not do anything for language development. So this slide is just one of many that really shows from an economic, from an educational, from a sociological research, we know that early childhood really makes a huge difference. We also now are looking from an economic viewpoint at these years. And what we found is that we're putting a whole lot less in here in the earliest years, is when we're putting a lot more here in these later years. And we know that money spent here will actually bring us better results. So if we could equalize this a little bit, what we would find is we would get a much better return. Because when you put it, this is a return on investment. When you put money in here in the birth to 3 or even up to age 5, you get a better return on your investment. There are economists. One of the best known is James Heckman. He won the Nobel Prize in economy. And he's gone in and made it his second career to analyze what's going on in early education. And it said, for every dollar we put in, we get about 7 back. And you save, not only during the education years, you have fewer kids needing special education, fewer kids being held back, children needing fewer of the auxiliary tutoring services, children more likely to graduate from high school and go on to get a 2- or 5-year degree. But then there's also some research to show us these kids are less likely to get in trouble with the law. They're less likely to go on welfare. The young girls, when they've tracked them over years, are less likely to get pregnant early. So there's really a good return on investment when you put the money in early. We also now have a change in public opinion. I started this work a few years ago, actually over 12 years ago, and I had the same company do a poll for me, and they said, Libby, you've got to get the American public behind you. And it's taken a long time, but this is a poll that was recently done by the First 5 Years Fund, and there's another one done by Gallup that came out a few months later. And it really shows that the American public, about 75% of us, support more money going to early childhood. And that's across men and women, Republicans, Democrats, and it's in all areas of the country. So it's a pretty exciting change to see that. I thought I'd give you a national snapshot. My field, and what I do at the Department of Education, is work mainly on the birth to 5 programs, but particularly on 3- and 4-year-old preschool. And this is a snapshot of what we've been spending over the years, and well, actually, how many kids are attending. So you can see in 2013, which is when we have the most recent data, we have only 28% of 4-year-olds are in state-funded pre-K. There's a larger number going to child care, but we know in this country that child care is pretty poor quality. And that you all, we're able to buy really good quality care for our kids. My daughter's paying $1,000 a month for Zayla, our 4-year-old granddaughter, to get a really great Montessori 4-year-old education. But a middle-income family can't afford that. So we've seen really, and it's, you can see it hasn't grown like it should. It grew a lot, and then we hit the recession, and it kind of held steady. But we're expecting that to bump up now that the recession is over. What's also interesting is this is the amount spent per child, and you can see actually that that's gone down since 2002. And I'll show you in the next slide why that's important. Because in K-12, we spend about $12,000 per child. And in pre-K, we're spending about $4,000. So we worry about the quality, and that's why we need to bump those numbers up. And this is Head Start. Head Start spends about $7,700 per child. So we need to change that dynamic. I thought you'd be interested in Texas. In Texas, we're doing pretty good. People don't know it, but fortunately, years ago, we put a pretty decent program in place for all our at-risk children. And in Texas, that's over 50% of our 4-year-olds go to pre-K. 52% of Texas 4-year-olds go to a pre-K program. In some districts, it's pretty good because we require a certified teacher, but we don't have any limit on the number of children in the classroom or the child-teacher ratio. So in Texas, you can have 22 4-year-olds in a classroom with 1 teacher. I call that crowd control. There are very, very few states that allow that. The standard is like 20 children per class with a teacher and a qualified aide. Also, you can see that our cost per child has actually gone down. Also, look at this, because this is where we're going to see some growth, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about cities. But we only have 6% of 3-year-olds. In Texas, you can actually pull down funding. School districts can pull down funding for 3-year-olds, but very few of them are doing it. I met last week with Dallas superintendents, though, and Dallas is starting to do that, and I'm hoping that Austin will follow suit. So here's the funding. You can see it's lower than we're spending nationally, $3,366 per child in pre-K, and we're spending about $10,000 per child in K-12. So great inequity there. One of the exciting things going on in early childhood is actually what we call systems building. You don't need to know about this, except that it does make a difference in terms of trying to make improvements. Because in early childhood we have child care, we have Head Start, and then we have preschool. And even in child care we have, a child care that we all pay for. Sometimes we call it preschool because we know that sounds better. We're buying an educational environment for our child. But there's a variety of preschool centers. Then there's Head Start, then there's preschool. How do we pull that together? Parents whose children are eligible for Head Start are generally eligible for pre-K in this state. So how does the parent decide? And this is the problem in many other states. So nationally, we put in $1 billion. This was a competitive program. Unfortunately, Texas didn't apply for this. But you can see the states that are in various shades of green that are actually building this system. And what they're doing is they're rating centers, and then they're providing the ratings to parents so parents can go out there and find the better centers. And more importantly, they're providing incentives for centers to improve themselves. So they're providing scholarships for people to go and get their degrees, their associate degrees and then their bachelor's degrees, so they can earn more. They're providing stipends for centers to buy better materials. They're providing coaching and mentoring, which is really important in early education for improving things. So you can see lots of states are doing this. Fortunately, the states that aren't funded are also able to learn from this, and we're trying to spread all of those findings around because I think it's got to happen if we're going to really bring the changes that are important. So these are some of the changes that are coming. It's called Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge. So we have states building the state system, as I've talked about. They're providing the information to parents. They're developing clear standards. I know you've heard a lot about the Common Core. We don't have Common Core in early childhood, but we do need standards. We do need teachers not just throwing out a set of things for kids to play with, but to really be intentional about what they're teaching. You saw in Rich's presentation how important math is. We need to make sure that our teachers are teaching math and that they have those skills. And so a lot of these Race to the Top states are looking at what are the standards in science, in math, and then Rich also talked about social emotional. We've really had a rebirth of that interest in social emotional skills, because that's actually, in early childhood is when you learn those. That's when you learn to share, when you learn to follow directions, when you learn to have some confidence about learning, when you learn to love learning. And then we see, we don't have this problem so much in Texas, although a little bit. We really need help with the early education workforce, because we have people in child care who are earning minimum wage, and we have people in Head Start who have to have an associate degree, and then we have people in schools that have to have a BA degree. We want to have a career path so they can get through if they decide they want to go on. Unfortunately, in most states, and Texas is one of them, if you have a 2-year associate degree that you get actually at ACC, you won't necessarily be able to take all of those credits and go back and get your BA degree. The University of Texas or Texas State or some other college will look through that transcript and say, we'll accept that one, we won't accept that one. And then we wonder why people can't finish their degree, because we haven't gone in and articulated those courses. Even Mississippi has done that. So that if you take a course at the community college in Mississippi, it will count in the colleges. We haven't done that in enough states, and it's really hurting in terms of building that workforce. So I work for the president. I know it wasn't a good election for the president, but he has certainly been an advocate for early learning. We have never had a president who has stood up and made early learning such a big, important issue, and he really will stand by it. We have an office of early learning in the Department of Education. That's the first time that's ever happened, because if you always kind of said a school doesn't start till kindergarten, and my boss, who is Arnie Duncan, now has said, you know, we've got to pay attention to what babies, not just our preschoolers are doing, but where the babies are, because those years are so darn important. So we have, many states know this, we have some new money. It's only $250 million, but it's significant when you use it carefully. Money that's going to go out to about 15 states to actually provide slots for this pre-K. You saw that we're providing money to build the system. Well, this is going to actually build those pre-K programs. Now you see that Texas, did apply. So these are the states that applied. The states that are in lighter green are states that haven't done a lot on preschool, and they are applying as development states, and then the states that are darker green are applying for expansion grants. And we will announce the winners, probably 15 of these at least, at an early learning summit at the White House on December 10th. So stay tuned. I'm excited that Texas applied. What we have found is that when a state gets together, gets the people in the room and applies, writes that application, because these applications are very complex, it does make a difference. Even if they don't get it, they've come together, they've gotten a plan, and there is change that happens. So in this proposal, the preschool development grants, we've actually outlined 12 quality standards. And this is pretty exciting, because when you look at those states, and I'll go back there, 36 states have now agreed that they think, at least in the programs that we would fund, they would agree to all of these standards. This is revolutionary in early childhood, because we can't get the funding up because we've always looked at this as child care, as babysitting, it's not important. And so what we've got to raise the standards and make sure that people understand this is learning. This is the foundation of learning. This is when children learn the basics in math. They learn the basics in reading. They learn the basics in their social emotional development. They build those skills. So we want high staff qualifications. We want ongoing professional development. I think Rich made the point, and you all know it. Our jobs are changing. We need to keep learning and growing, so we need that for teachers. We need a ratio of no more than 10 to 1, so that was I was happy that Texas agreed that maybe we should have that throughout the state. A class size of no more than 20, a full day program. I mean, let's face it, most families are, everybody's working. And it is, half-day programs don't really work, and we also know that we need 6 hours to cover the literacy, all the things that children need to learn. We want inclusion of kids with disabilities. It's a law. It hasn't happened. We're hoping that happens. We also have some great teachers and occupational therapists and great personnel working in special education. We need them helping in these early childhood programs. We want the curriculum to be developmentally appropriate. I'm not talking about kids sitting down at desks. We don't want children doing worksheets. If your children or your grandchildren are coming home with worksheets from their preschool program, you need to go in and look at the quality, because we all know that children learn a lot more from hands-on learning. You need to go, when you go into a classroom, it should look like, oh my gosh, they're just playing. And it's noisy, but it's intentional. If you go into a really good classroom, they won't even look up because they are so busy and engaged in what they're doing. And that's because it's developmentally appropriate, it's culturally and linguistically appropriate. We want individualized accommodations because kids are coming in at such different levels. Some are coming in at 4 already reading, some have never seen a book. We want instructional staff salaries, teachers like this, that are commensurate with the K-12, what a K-12 teacher gets. That happens in Texas in preschool programs in the schools, but not outside schools. We want program evaluation to mean continuous quality improvement. We use that in business, continuous quality improvements. It's a basic. We need that in our programs. We need comprehensive services because kids aren't just a brain. There's lots more parts of them that need to have attention. And then we want evidence-based health and safety standards. So we have these standards that have been set, and all those states have now agreed to do it. I pulled out some states that are really moving the agenda because, I think Texans are so surprised. Alabama has one of the highest quality programs in the country. They put $10 million in every single year. They're building their program really intentionally. California just approved $273 million, and it's for babies and infants and toddlers and preschoolers. In Maine, children can be served as they are in Texas through the school funding formula. It's not, though, in Maine it's different because it's for all 4-year-olds. Every single 4-year-old in Maine can go to preschool. The school districts weren't pulling it down, so the legislature, very conservative legislature, went in and took $4 million in casino revenues to say, here's some startup grants. Go start your program, and then you'll be able to pull the money down to pay for it. Michigan has really grown their program. They did $65 million this year, $60 million the year before, so they're well on their way. And then I hope you saw the incredible fight that we had in New York between the Governor Cuomo, and Mayor de Blasio, who were fighting over who would pay for the preschool program in that state. That's the kind of fight I like to see, and they ended up with $320 million for preschool. One of my interns is running the program in New York City. They expanded to 50,000 children. When they opened preschool for 4-year-olds in New York, they went from 30 to 50,000 children, and they're going to 70,000 next year. I mean, when you talk about ramp up, scale, I mean, everybody, all hands were on deck. I mean, everybody in the city was focused on that. But you can do it. There's a will. And then cities. Cities aren't waiting. I think everybody's seen the research, particularly the business community. You know who led the effort in San Antonio was Charles Button, H-E-B. They got the business community together in San Antonio, and they said, what can we do for our city? What will really help us move this city forward? And after a few months of study, what they came to is they passed an 1/8 cent sales tax. Fortunately, they had that, we don't. And they've established 4 preschool centers around the city. I went down to visit them and was really impressed with the quality. So that was great. We have Boston doing wonderful stuff. Seattle just passed a bond initiative, and they're going to expand pre-K to every 3- and 4-year-old at 200% of poverty. Denver just renewed their commitment to their preschool program, which is a sliding scale fee, but it's free for low-income children. San Francisco also had a big ballot initiative. They provide preschool for every 4-year-old. West Sacramento also for every 4-year-old. Tulsa is an amazing city. You wouldn't believe what they do, not just for 4-year-olds, but for 3-year-olds and for infants and toddlers. If you really want to see good practice, you go to Tulsa. Salt Lake City and Chicago, the business community is now coming in and funding, saying, we'll put the money up for this, which we want our money back if we can show that we, in Tulsa, it's actually, or in Salt Lake, it's actually have fewer children referred to special ed. In Chicago, it's a little bit broader. There are a lot of other programs in a few states, but I mean, a few cities. Kansas City is looking at it. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And I think even in Austin, we've heard the mayoral candidates talk about this. So I think I have like 2 minutes left, and I did want to leave a few minutes for questions. So I should have started by saying, thank you all for what you do. I see your impact everywhere, and I'm just so excited to be a member, and to also just to see what you've done and how you've revolutionized this city. So I'm really delighted. I get the emails, and I want to be at the events, but I'm in Washington for 2 more years, and then I will be back. And I just want you to know that I am so proud of you, what you do, and I'm proud to be a member. So 2 minutes for questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back to the back.
Elizabeth Frisch.
Yeah, thank you for your donation.
Can you all hear over there? Mm-hmm. Do I need the mic? No. I have a big voice, so I'll talk really loud. So one of the things, I'm 100% in support of these programs, and I'm very excited to see them grow. But as someone who works in the area of, I help people get rid of their baggage so they can actually think and do. What is the focus as far as, because I feel like I have to counteract what my kids are learning in school right now, on getting them to think non-linearly and holistically, because my schools, I'm in great exemplary schools, I'm very blessed, but all they teach my kids to do is take the test, the assessment. And so when my kids come home, I have to get them to do this, because they're so focused on this. Like my 12-year-old starting his own business, right? Because I just want him to get the world of like, yeah, you learned science, you learned this, but how can we do that in the pre-K? Have they looked at that? Because to me, that's where it starts, is your kids start thinking outside of topics at that age, but then we put them in school and we take that away almost from their thinking.
Well, I think we all know that what we want is we want children who are programming the computer instead of doing what the computer said.
Right.
And that we really want that creativity, which is so incredible here in Austin. I mean, I just think the creativity is why we love Austin. So, that's why I say, I can say quickly, no worksheets. But you really need to go in and see those projects. We call it project-based approach. I mean, there's many different ways to approach a preschool program. There are many different curriculum. But I think that those who are controlling it, who are on the cutting edge, are kind of back to the basics of let's do more projects and let's do more hands-on so that we get that creativity in. I'm told I have no time left. Or maybe one minute left, or one more question. But we're with you, and I think that is happening. But you all need to help make it happen. You need to ask those questions when you go into your school, even if your child's in 5th or 6th grade. What's happening in our preschool? So, one more question? Well, thank you all again for inviting me, for allowing me to